It's time to explore the world according to Glenn. I'm Kevin Jacobsen. Glenn Close is my favorite actress, and this show is all about exploring the career of one of the finest actors of her generation. Each episode, I'll be joined by a guest as we dive into one of Glenn's movies, TV shows, or stage productions, going chronologically through her career, discussing her performance, and assessing the project itself. And today, we are talking Glenn's scene-stealing performance in the magical realism historical drama, The House of the Spirits.
Time nominee Glenn Close, motherfuckers.
My guest today is a true lover of actresses and gifted writer. He has joined me on multiple episodes of my Best Actress series on And the Runner-Up Is, talking the years 1933 and 2004. Writer at The Film Experience. Welcome to the show, Cláudio Alves.
Hello, thank you for having me. I've been waiting for this invitation.
Yes, I have been so eager to have you on ever since you told me all about Glenn's wonderful performance in Wake Up Dead Man, and I feel like potentially there is some overlap here with her performance in The House of the Spirits. So thank you for coming on with me.
I mean, I love Glenn, so
yeah. Well, before we talk The House of the Spirits, of which we have many things to say, tell me your relationship with Glenn overall, and if you remember when you first saw her, and if you have a favorite performance of hers.
I mean, I would love to repeat what many guests have already said. My first brush with Glenn was probably as Cruella de Vil. I was obsessed as a kid. You know, I've always been drawn to villains as, little gay boy, loves the demon. And of course, I adored like costume design and things like that from a young age, and I loved to draw. And I would like draw what I would put Cruella on. And I remember very, with a lot of detail, how I would try to imitate her laughter, especially from the first film, because I had a video cassette and we played, and I love that moment when she's alone in sort of her house and she's laughing in wide shots and almost stomping her feet in glee, and I tried to imitate that, and I'd put on a blanket to be a fur coat and have a pencil as the cigarette holder.
Wow.
So yeah,
I love that.
My connection with Glenn goes way back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then of course when I started getting more into movies, a lot of it was at first through Oscar and also through costume design, which are two avenues that very concretely lead to Glenn Close, because love her great costume design she is, but also of course her many Oscar nominations. And I think when she sort of became one of my favorites, not just like a childhood idol, was probably when I watched Dangerous Liaison, which was one of the first films I had to purchase from abroad because there was no DVD here in Portugal that I could find. And so it was like a bit of work to get to finally see it. And then I think at that point mostly wanted to see it because I'd read it has some of the most accurate 18th century costumes ever put to film. And it does. And then I just fell in love with Glenn's Marquise de Merteuil. And I even was like a 14, 15-year-old bought the book, the Cordelo de la Clos novel to read, which is maybe not the most appropriate thing. And yeah, it was love at first. I don't know, not first sight, but like first evil glare. She's so good at being perfidious.
Yeah, there's obviously some connective tissue with Cruella and the Marquise de Merteuil for sure.
I love her.
I love this. Yes, she is truly one of the best at it. And she is some of the best at being good, too. So, again, she has the range. We know this.
I wrote a piece about her when she lost for Hillbilly Elegy, which we should all forget exists.
Yes.
Like, even for her sake, we should all forget that exists. For her legacy. You should skip that episode. No, but I wrote about it, and one of the things is she always understands the assignment, and she's despite having, like, I think it was Iowa Edinbury when she still had a letterbox account. Like, she's always doing so much. She always finds a way to do a lot. But I think she does find a way to fit into each of her project's demands, no matter how divergent they might be. And if one looks at the sprawl of her career as you are doing here, she has such a variety of tones and genres, from horror to broad comedy to, to prestige drama, of course, like in this thing we're going to talk about. And it's one of the reasons why I messaged you immediately after watching Wake Up Dead Man, because in some ways that performance seems to be almost playing with her range, with her ability to be a cartoon, to deliver a killer monologue, to maliciously savor the misfortunes of somebody else, but then to sort of collapse into herself and be good, be bad, be theatrical, be introspective. It's, I still think you were a ghostwriter, uncredited, but, So,
I'll never tell. Yeah, you told me, didn't you say it was like a greatest hits kind of thing of all of her strengths?
I maintain Johnson is a Glenn fan. He probably is listening to this podcast. And he wrote that part to be sort of, I know she can do this and this and this and this and this and this. Let's put her to the test.
I am so excited to see that movie. It also happens to be coming out on my birthday. I don't think that's a coincidence, so...
It's all connected.
It is. Her web connects us all. So, anyway, on that note, actually, I think it is time to get to our main subject here, the House of the Spirits. My goodness, there is so much to discuss with this. So, this is based on the novel, The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende, her debut novel, which became a bestseller in the 80s. So the novel is all about 4 generations of the Trueba family, a Chilean family, as the patriarch Esteban becomes a prominent businessman. His wife Clara is clairvoyant, and all of this is largely against the backdrop of political unrest in the country. So because of the book's bestseller status, Isabel Allende got many offers to adapt her story into a film, with the Danish filmmaker Billy August ultimately succeeding in convincing Allende to trust him with her story. But then that's where things got messy, because the producers wanted to sell this film internationally and therefore decided to go for an almost all-white English-speaking cast, even though this is entirely set in Chile. And, all the characters are of Latin descent, supposedly. So essentially the casting was like, let's pick all of the prestige actors of the late 80s and early 90s we can possibly get, including Jeremy Irons and Meryl Streep as Esteban and Clara, Winona Ryder as their daughter, Vanessa Redgrave and Armin Mueller-Stahl as Clara's parents, Antonio Banderas, a Spaniard, as Pedro, the love interest of Winona Ryder's character, and of course, Glenn Close as Esteban's troubled sister, Ferala. And the film was shot entirely in Europe, mostly Denmark and Portugal. So, lots of concessions being made right from the jump in telling this story. So for the plot description, there's a lot going on with this movie, which takes place over the course of about 50 years. It starts with a young Clara discovering her clairvoyant gifts, which involve her being able to tell the future, but she is traumatized when she feels that she inadvertently caused her older sister's death. Eventually, she grows up and is played by Meryl Streep in her adulthood. She is wooed by Esteban, played by Jeremy Irons, a businessman who is overseeing the construction of a beautiful local hacienda and now has prominent influence in his community. Esteban's sister is Ferala, played by Glenn, a repressed religious woman who is struck by the angelic beauty of Clara and develops a bit of a fixation on her, which kind of alarms Esteban. So Esteban and Clara get married. They have a daughter, Blanca, played by Winona Ryder eventually, and Blanca is in a secret romance with Pedro, Antonio Banderas, who works for Esteban but is treated like many of his workers as a second-class citizen. He ultimately becomes involved in local politics in opposition to Esteban's more conservative positions and fighting for workers' rights, and yeah, plenty of complications ensue. Anyway, all of this takes place from the 1920s to the 1970s. There's so much to talk about. Claudio, I am so curious for your thoughts on this movie. What is your relationship with the House of the Spirits? And most importantly, your thoughts on Glenn's performance?
Okay, so The House of the Spirits was a film I've had on DVD for a long time.
Hmm.
I think at some point it came with the newspaper because you're in Portugal. We had a time where that was very common, like newspapers would do these like film collections that you'd get for free with the newspaper, and The House of the Spirits was one of them. And I remember beyond the cast, what really attracted me to want to watch this, like as a teen, was the fact that this was one of two sort of big international productions I knew were shot in Portugal. The other was La Reine Margot, Queen Margot, and I was curious about it, and I watched it, and I hated it. I loathed it from the start. It is so boring, and it is so stupid in its conception. Not the original text. I'm not here to criticize Allende's work, but Father August's adaptation of it, and it is like again, as I'm telling you, at the time I was sort of getting into cinema through the Oscars, etc. So I was watching a lot of Meryl Streep and getting, lots of positive feelings for her. But then I watched this and like, oh, I didn't know she could be this terrible in a movie. And I haven't rewatched this probably in a decade or so. I only watched it because you asked me, you invited me for this episode.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And if possible, it's worse than I remembered.
Wow.
Like, I remember, for example, the exteriors, especially late in the film, like when Esteban and Blanca are Christmas shopping, while Clara is dying at the same time, which is a very stupid death scene, by the way. Whatever. I know that's it. That's Rua Augusta in Lisbon. And I remember that because it's so obvious where it is. Like I know the storefront where they're at the beginning of that shot. Like it's a fabric store. But and I remember how obvious it was Lisbon. Like they didn't hide the Portuguese cobblestone or anything.
Yeah.
But I had forgotten just how obvious it was that this was shot in Portugal because like the government building, the Senate, is our government building here, the one that I'm used to seeing when seeing the Portuguese Assembly. The streets during the coup, because this is inspired by the Chilean coup, but the way they are shot in Lisbon, with what I suppose are military vehicles they probably borrowed from the Portuguese army, it looks like they are reenacting the Carnation Revolution in Portugal. It's at points this couldn't look more Portuguese if they had the flag in the background, and it is so ridiculous that they keep talking about it as a Latin American country. But I guess for the German and Danish imagination, Portugal is Latin America, I suppose. Which is why, when you invited me to this, I sent you a message like, this is the Emilia Perez of 1993. Like, I understand that Allende's novel, and this will never specify this is Chile, but the political history that is being described in it is very clearly Chilean. So to shoot all of this in Europe with mostly white actors, it is Emilia Perez all over
Mm-hmm.
again. And not just even white actors, because you have Sarita Chuduri,
Yeah.
who I guess because she's brown, it's like Rita Moreno in The King and I. You're
Ooh,
exotic
yeah.
enough to pass for whatever. It's like old Hollywood
It really is.
racial
Yeah.
casting, and this wasn't in 1993. It's absurd.
Yep.
And
I know.
but here's the thing:
Uh-huh.
if this was good in other ways, like The King and I is good in other ways,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I could find a way to look beyond it. But it is not. It is so boring,
Mm-hmm.
especially after Glenn dies, where you basically are left
Oh my
with
God.
no good performance to hold on to. Especially as like Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons are delivering some of the worst things they've ever done in their career.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I even took notes, writer's narration, because the film is sort of framed through Blanca's narration. She says everything happened so fast, and that is this like the meanest lie to tell someone at the beginning of the Hours of the Spirits, because
Yeah.
that's an expectation that is just, again, it's just the worst lie possible. Because this film
Yeah.
seems like it lasts 3 days. It's
Mm-hmm.
oh, but Glenn is good. Glenn is good. Glenn is good. This should have been like a lesbian romance between Glenn and Meryl Streep, though maybe we could get someone else other than Meryl Streep.
Mm-hmm.
And after coming back from TIFF, it's great to see her in Mrs. Denver's drag again. She
Mm-hmm.
looks great in Black and Severity
Love
and
it.
Sexual
Yeah.
Repression. It's a great look on her. She pulls it off.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So for me, yes, I want to start with a positive, Glenn Close.
Glenn.
Just her ability to turn shit into sugar, as my friend Chell says, is unmatched. Like, this is such a fun performance in the middle of this absolute slog of a movie. She is so juicy and layered and kind of campy at times, but still tragic. She totally understands the assignment, like you said earlier, in such a way that I don't think anyone else on that set knew what movie they were making. I think she recognizes like the sort of soap opera quality of this story more than anyone else and is clearly having a ball with it. And so that is where my praise of this movie ends. Because, yeah, I had seen some scenes of her in this movie before this, so I knew what to expect from her. I had never sat down to actually watch this whole 2 hours plus movie until this week, because I had heard many bad things about it, and all of that is confirmed now. Like, this is a dreadful experience. I'm sorry. I find so little else to recommend here. The pacing is so sluggish. The whitewashing is ridiculous, and I find so many of these performances to be lacking, if not downright laughable at times, from these like great actors too. And it feels like the definition, like the dictionary.com definition example of whitewashing, of like bastardizing a novel beyond the point of recognition, and like Hollywood just having no idea how to translate this story. Like zero authenticity to any of this. All the attempts to political commentary feel like they're just kind of obligatory more than actually wanting to delve into anything with substance, either because they don't really know what they're talking about or they just don't care, honestly. So I don't know. It's just like so dramatically inert for me, where it's like either it's overcooked at times and people are hamming it up, or it's underbaked, and I lose interest. So anyway, I mentioned in my Letterboxd review from this past week that, like, I'm not kidding when I say I was about 40 minutes into this movie watching that in the afternoon, and I started dozing off. And that's how unengaged I was. So I paused it. I gave it the respect that it doesn't really deserve, and I pressed play again after I finished a quick little nap and powered through. But Yeah, there's just no excuse for a film with this much plot and this much star power to be as boring as it is. And correct me if I'm wrong too, but like I feel like the clairvoyance, like the magical realism is kind of like an important part of the novel, but it is like barely factors into anything in the film to the point where I'm like, why would you even include it if you're not even going to really do anything with it, you know?
I mean, I guess you'd include it because it's the novel, and of course, Allende sort of is part of the magical realism context of Latin American literature. And this film, more than anything, seems motivated by just trying to capture literary prestige in film. You know, as many projects over the years, I think,
Yeah.
in Hollywood, especially Oscar adjacent, which thankfully this ends up not getting any of that. Um,
Yeah.
you're right when you say you gave it the respect it doesn't deserve because it's so dreadful. It seems so wholly unconnected to the politics. It reminds
Exactly.
me, which is a good comparison, of Billy August's adaptation of Les Miserables
Mm,
later in this decade, where he seems to understand the text in a way that makes politics secondary rather than sort of the point that is interwoven through all of these characters' lives.
right.
And it's the same problem here. It doesn't. It's just terrible and tedious, and he doesn't find a way either to make this soap opera, which you described it as, and it is a soap opera in some ways, interesting or engaging. There
Yeah.
is like when in the scene when Vanessa Redgrave and Armin Mueller-Stahl hit the train, and then Meryl goes find her mother's head in the bushes. Like there is a way to enjoy the macabre of this moment,
Right.
but it just frames it in such a stultifying. Like I don't want to lean on prestige as a negative connotation for this one, but it really seems apt because it is so
Yeah.
respectable and tasteful, and it's just like watching. You want to watch a living person, but you're staring at an embalmed corpse for over 2 hours. It
Yeah. Very well said.
I
Hmm.
I do think Glenn understands in some level sort of what this film needs to come alive when she's on screen. And she also seems to be one of the few actors, because Meryl is completely lost, to sort of tap
Mm,
into the potential absurdity of the text, and to not approach it in an ironic way, but understand that you can relish in it a little bit in a way that Streep just doesn't, which is very odd, especially considering like just then Death Becomes Her. She was going to do The River Wild the year after. It's this inexplicable failure in the middle of her career, but whatever. Glenn is just
yeah.
great, even if she has one of the most undignified entrances possible.
Yeah. I'm
Like
going to talk about that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
like changing her mother's bedpan and the way her ill mother is shot, just
Yeah.
to drive home the grotesquerie of it, the complete
Hmm.
disgust August's perspective as on that figure, the sound of flies buzzing around in the scene, but then she has that great line at the end where it's like, I'd like to have been born a man,
Yeah.
so I could leave too, and the way she says it, it's not like, for example, Mercury's big speech about
Hmm.
the role of a woman in 18th century society. It reminded me more of like Lady Macbeth in
Oh, yeah.
in 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 Macbeth when she's talking about her sex, and this resentment of the limitations posited on her by being born a woman in this context, but also in some ways because then you have the sort of lesbian attraction to Meryl. It sort of opens up. But she says it so stonily and resolute. It's it feels like a confrontation, but in a way that's so tossed off. It's a really great line reading that doesn't draw too much attention to itself, but it it lays down everything you need to know to understand this character going forward.
Hmm.
She's so striking immediately, even if she has those
Yeah.
stupid contacts to darken her eyes to make her look more Latin American.
I know.
Ugh. Uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
and like later when her mother dies and she that scene on in the church, like she just sinks her teeth into the incestuous possibilities of this text.
I
She has
know.
so
Hmm.
much fun with it. Like, I could take care of you again. To 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 Esteban, just like seconds before saying the right woman for him is a woman that takes care of him, and the way she
I
leans
know.
into him and she's all dressed in
Yes.
black.
The physicality. Yeah.
Their
Exactly.
face is wonderfully framed by her shawl. And again,
Hmm.
she's an actress who always knows how to make the most of whatever costume she's given, and that is on full display here. She she's so nakedly desperate and angry in that moment. And I'm like, why would anyone want to take care of this man? Esteban is the most repulsive figure in all of the movie. Even
Hmm.
the grace extended to him by his daughter, sort of in the frame narrative. I'm like, where did he earn this? But in that moment, Glenn sort of makes us believe this desperate attachment, even if it's lunacy. And that's really and she makes it both absurd and heartfelt. And to me, that's really the mark of her talent. And like you said, she's making sugar out of shit. That's what he said.
Yeah. She's turning shit into sugar. Yes.
Yeah, she is
But
completely.
yeah, well, I mean, the way that August frames her in the first scene is really just so unceremonious. Like you have Glenn Close here, and she's just like the first shot we get of her is just like sitting in like a medium wide shot at a table, and I'm like, okay, I guess she's in the movie now. But yeah, I love how she is continuing the themes of her roles in this time of women who are kind of resigned to their station in life and resentful of some of the limitations of that. I think that is a very strong introduction. And yeah, I do love that scene at the church where she is telling her brother, I could take care of you, like she did when they were children. And like Ferala telling him, like, even though he's like starting to pine after Clara, she's I love her line when she says, "You don't want her, you want someone normal." Which made me laugh. And she like and she keeps insisting like he needs someone who can take care of you and like worship you. And the way she's leaning into him and making these very obvious gestures that she's might be a little too in love with him, like yeah, you're kind of seeing in that moment just how quickly or like how much she fixates on another person in that way, which will obviously go to her stuff with Meryl. I do want to, of course, talk about that big first scene with Glenn and Meryl sharing the screen for the first time together in their career, which is just like a seismic moment for all actress lovers, I think. The way they just sit down for lunch, and, the styling is very obvious. She's in all black, Meryl is in all white, but I love what Glenn brings to that scene because she is like so touch starved, like that she bursts into tears shortly after Clara touches her. Like it's kind of ridiculous, but I do enjoy that weirdly intense energy that Glenn brings to it. And this is where it made me want to see that remake of like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane with Glenn and Meryl. Glenn obviously playing Baby Jane. I still need that. I know they're getting older, but like I need that.
I mean, make it take it out of the '60s and make it now.
Right? Yeah.
So it
Why
makes
not?
more sense. Like they're older.
Yeah.
Like the
Mm-hmm.
sort of an actress can work until later now, but there's still a limit where there are no more
Right.
like that. But yeah, that scene
Yeah.
is again the styling is obvious, but I kind of love it. Like she's like an ink blot in the middle of
Yeah.
like all of these flowery pastels and Streep has flowers on her head. She looks like a porcelain doll.
Yes,
And
she's a beautiful earth goddess. Yes.
she and the way she's acting, it's so forced in the way it's trying to be airy and eerie and ethereal and mystical. And and
Yeah.
then you have Close, who is basically taking the opposite approach of just bearing down everything in her body and her emotions, and just she looks like she's going to discombobulate just at the thought of kindness on her and a touch. She reminded me of like the narration in Notes of a Scandal. If it was played like the impact of a touch after so long that nobody has touched her
Yes.
with any sort of sweetness, or not to reprimand her, or ask for her services. It is over egged. It is very intense. It is very intense in that very Glenn way, where
Yeah.
she. But again, this film is dying on the table. She's trying to defibrillate it back to life. And I don't care if it maybe in another context it would be too much. In this context, nothing is too much because this film is putting me in a coma. So,
Yeah.
we need her to zap something into it. Especially because this character, because Clara is basically the same through the entire film. But like
Yeah.
Ferula actually has an arc, but it is so compressed. Like, for example, I understand that she does lean both literally and metaphorically a little bit too much in that scene at the church of her mother's funeral. But also, that is the only scene where she's given to establish that Ferula is sort of an incestuous fixation on her brother. So she kind of has to communicate that immediately, and the intensity of that immediately, so you can understand the transference that happens from him to Clara later on.
Right.
And it really feels like she is doing everything she can to solve the mess she was handled. Even if she thought this was wonderful material, like watching it really feels like you're watching someone trying to patch up a boat that's sinking.
Yeah. I mean, she is on her way in her car calling Billy August, being like, "You guys are in a crisis. I'm on my way." And she pulled through, you know? And she really does so much complimentary, not derogatory. Like, even there's this one little scene where after Clara and Esteban get married, and Ferala is like helping to escort her back to the hacienda, and she seems very giddy and sort of giggly with her, and Esteban like yanks her back and tells Ferala to stop treating her like a child. And just the like intensity of the way Ferala like gasps when he yanks her back is, I don't know why it was so funny to me.
And then
Just like
she,
everything is so
yeah,
pronounced.
and then she keeps sort of wanting to touch the train of Meryl's skirt and help
Yeah.
along even after that, and you can kind of see like the push and pull of not wanting to inspire Esteban's ire again, but also wanting to
Yep.
help Clara. It is such a good thing to focus because nothing else is working on screen. So
Exactly.
kind of zone in on Glenn because the alternative is just too dreadful to ponder.
Yeah. I think we should also talk about her big scene, I would say, in the movie, which is where she says the devil is tormenting me. And she admits in confession that, like, sometimes at night she goes to Clara's door and watches her while she sleeps. And she talks about how like Clara is not of this world, that she's an angel, like wishing to crawl into bed and touch her skin. And there's that line where she says, "When my brother sometimes sleeps with her, it's even worse." And it's like she sweats, her whole body shakes, and is listening to them having sex. Even she even saw them once, and she fears that her brother maybe wants to possess Clara and her talents to kind of maybe capture it for himself. And I don't know. There's so many lines within that that's just, I was so entertained. Just talking about the abundance of juices, watching words whispered in her ear. It's just like, oh my God, Glenn.
You were the priest who wanted to enjoy her. What was it? Like her gift for narration? That's what he said.
Yes, exactly. I would be living for that if she was telling me all that in confession. I'm like, go on, girl. Let's get into it.
You wanted to clean out with
Yes,
Ferala.
exactly. Yes, very much that.
Oh god. Ferula needed a gay bestie. Like she's having a lesbian crush out. She needs someone to.
Hmm.
She can do so much better than this.
Yes. And actually, like the way she speaks about Clara in those like very sort of mellifluous phrasing and all of that. I don't want to speak for it, but it is very lesbian esque the way that she describes her, as if she's like she is the sun and she is staring into her whenever she's with her.
I mean, people have people in queer circles. We have lesbian friends who was once upon a time at a very like we've had conversations like this. I think a lot of people can relate. They're like, "Oh, honey,
Yeah.
oh, honey,
Yeah.
no,
It's a lot.
this is
Yeah.
so much." Um, but it is a really wonderful scene, especially because it is just so glam. It is detached from like even
Right. Totally.
the production design. Like every scene seems production designed within an inch of their life. Like when Clara's sister dies, it's like her bedroom is already prepared for a wake before she's dead. It is such a suffocating film in so many ways. And it is away from the incompetence of Streep and Irons.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, we do have flashes of them, but at least they're not talking. And through Glenn's description, I can sort of see what Clara is supposed to be in this film.
Exactly.
And for a moment, I glimpsed what Ayanda wanted this character to be in Glenn's words. And the film also almost became good, but then the scene ended. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and even I do think the film is well costumed and intermittently well shot, and that is sort of in evidence in this scene, like the close up of her in black, the her face framed. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's very it's very almost Baroque portraiture, French portraiture in a way, and it works very well. It's just a great performance showcase, and it's handling her the film and letting her bring it to life for a few moments, and then everything comes crashing down again.
Yeah. Very much so.
They
But
do,
I do. I mean, I.
they do look
Mm-hmm.
like a pair
Go
of
ahead.
very happy lesbian mothers during the birth scene.
Yeah, they do. Again, we wish that this is what this story was about, right? But
Like they could
yeah.
have the kids are alright in 1993 with both of them.
Whoa, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, the scene where like we have like Clara becoming pregnant, of course, and Ferala remains as close to her as she can be. But I again, I love those little scenes in between, like that little scene at breakfast, for example, when Clara and Ferala do their little cheek kisses
Mhm.
to each other, and Esteban is kind of just like, is all this necessary? I mean, like, that is actually the part of the film where I was like, I am kind of enjoying this for the unintentional comedy and like the camp value. I do not think that Billy August or most people involved know what they're doing, but like those are the moments I'm like, there's something here. We should have followed this thread a little more.
Oh, and then when they're playing badminton, I think it's badminton
Yeah.
in the courtyard. Which again, by the way, that is Alentejo in Portugal. It looks like Alentejo. It does not look like Latin America. It This is the same with the Western shot in Spain, but even more so because even the house looks like Portuguese architecture in some ways. But anyway, um, I watched that scene and I took note and I said, could Close play the home character in a remake of Come to the Stable? Been more entertaining than this mess. But like they fall
Wow.
down and they're so happy, and Esteban is so
Mhm.
unhappy at their happiness,
Mhm.
and then the earthquake happens, and Esteban returns home to find that Ferula got into bed with Clara. Very
Yeah.
chaste. They're both dressed. Ferula is over the sheets. Clara is under them.
Right.
It's just a comforting thing because there was an earthquake.
Mhm.
And of course we have that when he sends her away. And
Mhm.
you say that her confession is sort of her big scene in the film, but I think it's actually this one
Yeah.
because
I think they're both. Yeah.
because Irons is awful as he is throughout this entire movie. I don't know what happened to him. It's again with Streep. They sort of had a concussion or something before it started. But Glenn's face, like it
Yeah.
reminded me of like a surface of a lake when a storm is coming, and it starts
Mm.
to vibrate a little bit even before rain falls because the wind is pushing the surface, and then it just all explodes when rain starts to fall. And it her face in this scene, especially because August as the wisdom, not something he's very rich with, to linger on her and let that mirror stillness of the lake surface explode into a storm, which
Mm.
leads to her curse upon her brother, which is so visceral. It feels real. It feels like she's puncturing the nonsense of this corpse like film. And like
Yeah.
it like you feel the curse is real, like that he is condemned to eternal loneliness. And it's all these indignities over the decades that we've witnessed Ferala endure just come out in this final spit of venom that, despite it all, doesn't feel so much venomous as it does. She's almost seems like she's perpetuating cosmic justice more than she's wanting to punish him personally. It's not beatific, like she's not going for saintliness, but it's great. It's a great scene. It's like if the film were only sort of these moments, and it's a moment where more than when Meryl is moving things around, which happens once or
Mm.
twice, where I actually believe in the sort of porous nature of the supernatural and reality within the text of this novel turned film.
Yeah. To your point. Yeah, that is when it does feel like it's tapping into Allende's vision more, and that August actually sees what it is. So, yeah, I mean, I do love that line delivery when she's telling him, "You'll always be lonely and die afraid with a guilty conscience." Ugh, I love how venomous she is. I love the ferocity in her eyes and her focus. It does genuinely feel like cosmic justice curse. Like, I would fully believe that I was cursed for eternity looking into her eyes as she tells me that. And just the hurt and the betrayal of feeling like she may never see Clara again. You feel for her. I do. She is the most sympathetic figure in this movie for me, quite frankly. So,
And then she exits the movie, and
and then she exits the movie and I lose interest completely.
I mean, she does return as a ghost for
Sure, there is that. Mm-hmm.
for a scene that I don't think it's her fault, but doesn't quite work for me. I think it's the same thing with her introduction. It's August frames it so dryly.
Yes.
Like he's got this
Yeah.
beautiful sort of mystical moment, and it's just so. Oh, like I do love sort of the her swinging chatelaine attached to her waist, the way she's dressed so properly as when she was in that house, which contrasts to the state of her corpse when Clara
Mm-hmm.
finds it. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's 1 hour plus of movie left.
I know. I mean, like, I do wish we got to see more of them, Meryl and Glenn, together, because I feel that relationship so strongly. And it's also obviously the extra textual stuff that I'm bringing to it of Meryl and Glenn, these two women who I have such a history with on screen for decades. I wish there was more. I wish I could feel a little more from their connection on screen together, because this is like a seismic event. Like I saw a Letterboxd review actually of this movie, comparing it to like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino meeting in Heat. Like that, except for like actress gaze. Like that is what this is. And yet it feels like I wish there was even more. Like I wish I could actually feel something from this, but anyway, yeah, that, like you said, that's it for Glenn. And as far as I'm concerned, all interest in the movie is over. I just wanted to, again, sort of mention, since we're done talking about Glenn at this point, just the approach of this film is so fundamentally flawed for me because Clara is supposed to be one of our protagonists, but she is so passive in this film compared to what I've read about the novel, which I haven't read, but reading what other people have said, in which she is very much centralized. Like, there is that kind of spectral presence she has, and these themes about resilience and like passing along stories as a way of remembering the past and whatnot, and not wanting to repeat the mistakes for the future. All of that I feel like is just like briefly touched on or completely passed over. That, and like there's so little context about the Chilean politics and the coup, and yes, there are the queer undertones suggested, obviously, but they're supposedly stronger in the novel. Like, I could just think of so many ways that this could have been a very powerful story about generations and legacy, and this, like, also, like, the push and pull of liberals and conservatives, and, like, you know, trauma, and like the tree of life thing of like the way of nature versus the way of grace, you know, wrestling inside me. Like, there are so many ways that this just kind of like, this punts everything because it's in a rush to get through all the plot points, and that it just doesn't give you any real feeling in the end, no humanity. And I don't know, it just made me think of like other films that have done somewhat similar things within this sort of subgenre. As odd as it may sound, something like at Eve's Bayou, which does like a few years after this, where like Casey Lemons does in like exploring generational trauma and dipping into magical realism, and it's just so much more evocative and authentic and meaningful than this. When I feel like, I don't know, it just seems like the vision of this is to just get awards traction, honestly. When I watch it, it feels disingenuous.
Like, I understand somewhat having trouble transposing a very magical realist figure from the novel to the screen, and perhaps because of that, wanting to fixate more on Esteban as the anchor and center of it. But at the same time, if you do that, but then you are completely uninterested in the politics woven through this text, like, you are shooting yourself in the foot.
Right. Exactly.
You're talking about other films that, you know, explored similar material and did it better, and Killers of the Flower Moon, which centers also an awful man, and uh, and touches on spirituality, and takes it seriously as a material reality of these characters, and also as a wife character that through circumstance does have to become passive in parts of the narrative. But to me, it does it so much better, and it's engaging, and it is very clear-eyed about the intersection of political and personal rot within its male lead in ways that this film seems to struggle a lot throughout. It seems so eager to forgive Esteban without seemingly articulating or interiorizing what he needs to be forgiven for, which like the leftist radicals in the film that want to bring democracy to this unnamed country that is, again, because of historical parallels, Chile, is so tossed off when it really is the center of Blanca's story at the end. It's the center of the last generations of the story that's supposed to be a tale of different generations in parallel with the country's history. And it's such a complete failure. And I think it's worse because you can sort of see, like with Auguste's Les Miserables, you can sort of understand that there is a much more interesting text that exists beneath this stodgy mess of a movie, but it's just not coming through. That is it beyond boring. It's frustrating.
Yes, I felt the exact same way. And like, again, like there's so many interesting threads we can follow here that it just never really goes deep enough with. Even all this stuff with Esteban and Blanca, just that push and pull of her continuing to see Pedro and like someone he views as lower class and therefore not really worthy of being with his daughter. And of course, when Clara points out the hypocrisy of this, when he himself has been with Pancha, this local peasant girl,
I mean, he's
you
raped
know,
her.
well, yes, true. Um, he strikes Clara, and that is what leads to Clara leaving with Blanca and vowing never to return again, which is, great, nice to see. But it's just, we also are continuing to follow this piece of shit guy that I just don't care about, and we've been given no reason to really even care about or be invested in his redemption. He's not even really compelling in like a villainous way. He's just like a disgusting asshole monster who's also kind of aloof and unreadable in that classic Jeremy Irons way. And like he's trying to be menacing, but I don't know, it just does not work.
And like when during the military coup that he's so outraged that his daughter is arrested, and he mentions to the new people in power his role in facilitating this coup, and like, okay, why didn't we explore
Hmm.
this then? If you're so fixated
Right.
on following this asshole, why don't we articulate a bit more the way that he is actively acting against the people he says he loves? And
Yeah.
we're just hearing about like echoes later. It's
Hmm.
doesn't mean, and like Pedro, the character that in a way it's so important to the class dynamics at play in here, but he is turned basically into a prop that
Yeah.
in both Esteban and Blanca's stories, and then is like a prop is just stored in the basement of the house. And, okay, he's there.
Yeah.
We don't even have explore any of his character in any other way beyond
No.
Esteban
No,
wanting
no.
to kill him and Blanca being drawn to him out of rebellion, out of real feelings, out of it's difficult to say because Blanca
Out of him looking like Antonio
that
Banderas.
helps too, of course.
Hmm.
Antonio Banderas,
Yeah.
and constantly being like, "You're oh, you speak Spanish, yeah, you're Latin
Yeah, that's
American."
fine. Right.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that was the full discussion on that. Yeah.
Which is even weirder because the like I think at some point in the casting process there must have been, or maybe not, like a conversation about whiteness in Latin America because
Hmm.
Clara's family is obviously very white, blonde hair, blue eyed, and then you have Esteban, who is much more Mediterranean looking, and like you have Glenn Close wearing contacts, and he's from a sort of in the threshold of middle class, working class, that then he can exploit workers into becoming rich. But the workers he exploits are very much seem to be cast to look like more deep skinned, or in some ways
Yeah.
even perhaps descendants of indigenous population that is being exploited by these other characters, which you see in casting an Indian woman to play Pancha, okay,
Yeah.
and then casting this Spanish actor, which I guess is it's more exotic than Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons to play Pedro. Like you sense that there was some thought with behind this, but in the most wrong-headed way possible. Result. So much
Yeah.
about this should be about
It,
class and race and politics, and August
yeah.
is just completely unprepared and uninterested in exploring that. But then he can't make
Hmm.
the rest of it interesting either.
That's the thing. Yeah. I think by the end I get to where I'm like, I don't actually know what this movie is about. And I don't really know what August's vision actually is. Like there is no North Star. There is really no guiding force to any of this, no coherent point of view. It's trying to juggle like five or six different perspectives at various points, and it ends up not focusing enough on any one. So it feels like by the end, okay, so this is actually kind of Blanca's story, even though I don't often feel that way.
She's
But
sort of
also, we
a
focus so much
narrator.
on Esteban.
She's sort of a
Yeah, I
narrator.
guess.
So.
I guess.
But
But
also,
like that comes in and out. I don't
but
know.
also, Clara appears. The ghost of Clara appears to Blanca when she's in prison, which is one of the most beautiful
Yeah,
shots in the film. And it actually, I'm like,
sure.
oh, okay, August can make a shot, so he's just asleep at the wheel for the rest of the movie. Um, but then she also appears to Esteban, and again, from the way the narration talks about him to this moment, I feel like the film wants to redeem him. Like,
Yep,
where is the work for that? Because I don't see it. Like,
there is
and,
none.
and I
Yeah,
and I don't
yeah,
and the way Streep and Irons perform it and the way this is adapted, I don't see Clara ever loving Esteban. So that moment
yeah.
at the end makes no sense. I feel like the film wants me to have this emotional reaction to it, and I'm just confused.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a scene even before that of like Meryl is with Winona and in a bed about, and like Clara's talking about marrying Esteban all those years ago and is explaining that she was attracted to like his strength, and even though he has acted out so poorly, she kind of like is excusing it all by saying like nothing he did was out of malice, that she still loves him. All of this is a wild thing to say to your daughter who has just been physically abused by him. And the film does little to nothing with that idea. And yeah, I don't know. It's,
And also, she meets him as a child. It should be
well, there's that too. Yeah.
like
So,
you have, and they didn't even cast someone else to play Esteban in those scenes. It's just Jeremy Irons
yeah. Mm-hmm.
with
And Meryl's daughter, Grace Gummer, as
with
younger Clara.
yeah. It is very odd. It is very uncomfortable.
Yeah. So that's the House of the Spirits. I mean, I don't know. It's
Watch a super,
it's so
watch a
ill-conceived.
supercut of the Glenn scenes, people.
Honestly, you're better off just watching the supercut. Yeah. And you said that you watched the original European cut, right?
Yeah, which
Instead
is,
of the one that was released in the US. I don't know what the differences are.
I think it's like 10 minutes. I don't know the differences either. It's just
Yeah.
longer. I think it's around 10, 15 minutes longer of material,
Yeah.
which doesn't help make it work. So
Well, I really just don't have much to recommend about this. I don't think Winona is well cast either. It is a rather embarrassing performance from Jeremy Irons. I think Meryl is like completely adrift on what she needs to be doing. So it really is just Glenn for me. And I'm not just saying that as a fan. So I did, before we get to our sort of ending moments here, I wanted to read a little excerpt from this Entertainment Weekly interview from 1994, which was with Glenn and Meryl and Winona Ryder. So EW interviewed the three of them together. This doesn't have a whole lot to do with the movie, but I just found it entertaining, and I felt like this could be at least something entertaining rather than what the movie is, which is just like the weird dynamic between Glenn and Meryl is like they seem like sisters and they kind of like bicker back and forth in a very funny way. So anyway, just to read this a little bit, they're talking about women in Hollywood, especially older women, not getting great opportunities. So I'll just read a little bit from this. Glenn says, "It's so ironic because I feel more glamorous and sexual than I've ever felt in my entire life. I don't know about you." She laughs a little nervously and looks over at Streep. "Well, it's so silly here, but in Europe, isn't it different?" Streep, "In Europe? No. Close. Oh, they do think of older women differently." Streep, "No." Close. "You always hear that older women are more appreciated," and Streep, leaning toward Close and rolling her eyes, hello, no they don't. We have to look at that age group of women that are most desirable in certain men's eyes and find out if they have parts available to them as plentiful as male protagonists, or if we're screwed on every level. Here's the difficulty of having this conversation. You're talking to incredibly privileged people. You know, I made one speech, and I have regretted this speech every day of my life. It's like, that's my thing, God. And then I read interviews with other actresses, and they say, oh, well, I'm not going to complain because I feel very privileged. And I think, oh, right. I'm not raising any banner. All I did was say in one speech what everyone knows. If the people who are making this money at the top of the profession don't speak about it, then when will there be equity down the line? Close. I don't think it will ever change. I think they look at the dollars and cents at the box office. That's the bottom line. Now, women like Julia Roberts and Whoopi, they're getting valued. Streep, it isn't based on that. It isn't. Now, I love insert male movie star that's not named, but he doesn't bring in the box office, but he will command a big salary. Close. But that's because he's a male icon to all the guys. Streep. That's right, because he's a guy. People who are paying him feel, oh, I wish I were like that. So he seems valuable. But really, in terms of box office, if you put his name on that marquee, it's not going to bring in the people who watch Beavis and Butthead. Am I wrong? And then Winona Ryder chimes in. I think you're right. For my generation, I know that no one knows who he is. And then EW says, Winona, we're talking about your generation. You're supposedly in this fuckable group. Close. Pointing at Winona's overalls and combat boots. Not in that outfit. And everyone laughs. So, all of this, I wish I could have seen this interview rather than watch that movie.
I really do wish this had been a better meeting of Streep and Close. Especially because, just as you've shown in that interview, they do seem like they have great chemistry and good dynamic.
Mm-hmm. They need to play sisters in something.
Whatever happened to Baby Jane?
I'm telling you, we're manifesting. Yes. Okay, well, to get to the release of the film, The House of the Spirits was first released in Europe in October of 1993. This was the 145-minute theatrical cut, and then when Miramax acquired it for the US release, it was trimmed to 132 minutes and released on April 1st, 1994. So yes, this movie was released on April Fool's Day, which is pretty fitting. So its first weekend, it came in at number 11. And the films that did better that weekend, to give a snapshot of 1994 at the box office, included Guarding Tess, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Thumbelina, Clifford, Above the Rim, Schindler's List, still carrying over, Naked Gun 33 and a Third, The Final Insult, The Paper, which we'll be discussing very soon, D2, The Mighty Ducks, and the number one movie at the box office that weekend, Major League 2. So, this was one of the only real prestige, quote-unquote, offerings at the box office in April. Made about $6 million in total, and that was from a budget of $40 million. So, quite a loss for them, and they got no awards from it. So, pretty rough. The reviews were pretty mixed to negative. Lots of criticism around the casting and the butchering of the novel and the plot. It was just like, it was getting it from all angles.
Deserved.
So, yes. Well, let's get into why we think maybe what went wrong here. Like, why did it either not connect, or like, what could they have done to actually make this a good adaptation or something, you know?
I mean, I think part of it, you can't, it's like with Emilia Perez, you can't make a story that is so intrinsically connected and rooted in the context of Latin America and then just exclude Latin American voices, spaces, people from it completely. This should have never been given to Billy August. This should have never been a German production entirely shot between Denmark and Portugal. Of course, they wouldn't have the same budget, but I do feel this would have been better served by giving it to a Latin American director and a cast, even a cast of unknowns. I think they wouldn't have had the same budget, but they might have been able to grasp something of what made the novel so successful. Because here's the thing, the novel was successful, so there is interest in this story, just not in the version of the story that reached the screen. So to me, it really, I think the genesis of all this disaster happens when Allende agrees to the production by Billy August. That is sort of where everything went wrong. Because I do think this text as the possibility of becoming a good film. It just needs someone different at the helm. And if it's not, which I would understand, directed by a Latin American director, which again, because this is never named a country, you could even get away with someone that is not Chilean.
Mm-hmm.
And but if you're not going there, at least hire a Hollywood director that is willing to try with unknowns and try with actually reaching to the culture and the politics being depicted. Like, again, I'm returning to Martin Scorsese, who in the 90s did Kundun, which complete unknown, in the cast and rooted in another culture, but it did try to reach out to that story in some regard, and it needed that. It needs someone that's able to recognize what makes this text work and actually go for it instead of this stultifying prestige thing that in the end doesn't appeal to anybody because it fails to appeal to awards voters because it's horrible, which again never stop awards voters, but still, and it is so boring.
Emilia Perez. Yeah.
But then the biggest thing is that it's so boring and unengaging because it is not engaging with anything that made the novel exciting, that it even bores the
Right.
people who would have liked the novel in the first place. Like, I think the
Yeah.
problem with this really starts with the adaptation process and with the choice of whose voice you get to tell the story. So I don't think this film with Streep and Irons, and I'm sorry to say Close, even if I think she's really great in it, would I think it's dead on arrival. It's not. It would take someone very different from Billy August to make the rest of this production work with the cast, with the location, with everything set in stone already. It's one of those things that it is like a cop out to say, but it really from the beginning this was almost certainly going to be a failure. Maybe not commercially, but again, if you are neglecting everything that made the book popular, and you're still delivering audiences a 2+ hour film that technically moves across decades in a cut, but also seems like it moves at a snail's pace, you're going to bore them. You're not engaging with what was engaging in the novel in the first place. It's just
Yeah.
it's just so malformed from the start. I'm sorry,
No,
it's
it's
not
true.
a good answer, but
No,
it all
it's
started
very accurate.
when August should have never gotten his hands on this. And
Yeah. And I go back to like, what did Isabel Allende see in his pitch to her?
I really am curious.
Because I feel like something definitely changed from that to what we got, you know?
I guess when he directed this, he had Pele the Conqueror, and he had just won the Palme d'Or for the best intentions.
Yeah.
And the best intentions does sort of maybe not so much the politics, but at least the social. It is touching on matters of social class and tension in a way that,
Hmm.
and in a depiction of a marriage that doesn't work. That I think could be translated into a version of this story that would work on film. But so I can guess that maybe August approached it through that lens, but none of that comes across in the final film.
Right.
Mostly because I also think he doesn't understand these characters or this milieu in the same way that he sort of understood Ingmar Bergman's parents in The Best Intentions.
I completely co-sign so much of what you just said. I think it just really is satisfying no one in the end. And least of all, I mean, she has spoken out about it, how she doesn't like the adaptation either. So there's just nothing for people to latch onto here, other than maybe for people like us, Glenn's performance in a sort of semi-ironic way, I guess. But
But then
I don't know.
she's gone for most of it for the second half.
That's the problem. That's exactly it. So where are we at that point?
At that
Yeah.
point, they should have done like most Wuthering Heights adaptations. Just say fuck it to the second half of the novel. This is just about
Yes.
Glenn's tenure in the story.
That is, yeah, at this point, I would take that. But you know what? I would say if she can get nominated for Hillbilly Elegy, where she's giving a solid performance in a bad movie, why not slot her in for the House of the Spirits for the same reason?
This was eligible in '94.
Yes. So the Diane Wiest and Bullets Over Broadway year, which is like, there's that, and there's Jennifer Tilly and Uma Thurman and Helen Mirren for The Madness of King George and Rosemary Harris and Tom and Viv.
I would have nominated her over Ellen Mirren.
Yeah. I might consider kicking out Rosemary Harris. All due respect to the great Rosemary Harris, but I can't
That's
with
not a
that
secret.
movie.
Rosemary Harris is my pick from that lineup.
Okay, well,
Hot take.
fair enough.
In,
I,
in my imaginary Oscars, she's the only nominee I keep.
okay. Well, we can at least compromise and kick out Helen Mirren. She'll win down the line. It's fine.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
Yes. And this would, of course, be another loss for Glenn, but that's fine. She is, you know,
Oh,
um,
oh, I'm sorry. The
yeah.
in like in that interview that you read, she was speaking about feeling so sexual at that age, and I was like,
Yeah.
she has so much Deborah Carr energy.
Oh, yeah. In many ways, she does.
Certain
Yes.
ways, in the sad ways too.
Yes, very much so. And she has also mentioned that feeling of like feeling sexual and like being confident in herself when she was touring like for the press for The Wife. So she she's been feeling herself since the 90s. So good for her.
Love that for her.
Yes. Well, let's get to our last segment where we're going to rate Glenn's performance on a very specific scale. Thinking about her performance as Ferala, would you say she's ready for her close up? One of her best performances? Perhaps even Oscar worthy? Is it low Glenergy, not one of your favorites? Or close but no cigar, somewhere in the middle?
I would have to say close but no cigar.
Yeah.
I think mostly because that last scene doesn't work for me, which I guess it's a lot of it is August's fault, but yeah. I
Yeah.
really like what she's doing, but I think that in parts the awfulness of the film is bringing her down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. I think Close but No Cigar, I think she is single handedly what makes this film worth watching. Once her character dies, you can stop watching. But yeah, this is easily the most successful performance in the film, where you can actually see some attempt at characterization and you see the work she's putting in and like showing the sort of burden that this woman has had to live her entire life. And she is just so good at these kind of like intensely serious, damaged characters. And this is just another one of those. And it happens to be in a not so great film, but this is kind of her specialty at this point. So,
And speaking of religious, repressed, damaged
yes.
characters, watch Wake Up Dead Man later this year.
Yes. Let's go. I am so excited and presumably in a better movie than The House of the Spirits. So,
Oh, it is better. Like it would be difficult to be worse, but it is
yes,
better.
exactly. Yes. So we can get some of the same energy, but in a better movie
And the
later
same
this year.
costuming principles.
Right, exactly. Amazing. Well, we ended on a positive note at least. But Claudio, thank you so much for joining me. I always love our discussions.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure, even if you didn't make me rewatch The Other Spirits for this one.
You know what? You have watched so many movies, so many bad movies too, that I knew that I could count on you to not put up too much of a fuss to
Yeah,
watch this.
yeah, that is true. That is true.
Yeah. Well, where can people find more of your work on the internet, including some of your thoughts on Glenn and Wake Up Dead Man?
Okay, you can find my writing in English mostly on the film experience, including a TIFF review of Wake Up Dead Man, where I talk about Glenn's performance and try to avoid spoilers since it's going to be a while until people can watch that film. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I also write for the International Cinephile Society. You can find also a TIFF review of mine there for Copper. I write in Portuguese for the Portuguese site Magazine HD, where I have also posted some things about TIFF and other things, and where once upon a time I did write a long multi-page piece about Glenn Close when she lost the Oscar for The Wife. And if you're interested in more long-form essays, I wrote some of like a handful of them for the Belgian site Photogenie. Though that's like more academic stuff. If you're interested in that, there's no Glenn there. Though there is Jennifer Jones. If you guys are interested in that, I defend her. I defend her. I defend Jennifer Jones.
Wow.
Um,
Brave.
um, I mean, man, I mean, she isn't, to mention Cargan, she's in that car zone that car zone, it's just weird sentence,
I love it.
where her Oscar nominations are maybe the worst summation of her career possible. So there's that.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
in that regard, Close, our beloved Glenn Close, is much better served, even if ill Billyology is there.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so that's me, and you can find me on social media like at Cláudio Alves DC on most platforms.
Very good. Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for listening. You could find me on Kevin_Jacobsen on Twitter and Instagram, just Kevin Jacobsen, no underscore on Blue Sky. You can also listen to my Oscar-themed podcast, And the Runner-Up Is, for coverage of every single Best Actress race, including talking with Claudio about people like Katharine Hepburn or Annette Bening or Hilary Swank and everyone throughout history. So that's And the Runner-Up Is on all platforms. And to keep up with The World According to Glenn on social, follow The Glenn Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Rate, review, and follow The World According to Glenn on all podcast platforms. And with that, I bid you all adieu.